Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I am back again today doing another video, and the subject of today's video is going to be on Richard Hatch. Yes, Richard Hatch, the winner of Survivor Season 1 Borneo. I'm going to be talking about him and specifically why Richard hasn't played since 2004, or in other terms, he hasn't played since Season 8 Survivor All-Stars. So if you want a little bit of background here, Richard was on the first season ever of Survivor Borneo in 2001, and he was considered a pretty big deal at the time. He won the season, which became sort of a phenomenon of a television idea, and he quickly came back for season 8 in 2004, which was an all-returning player season. It was called Survivor All-Stars. Pretty iconic season at the time. And he had a middling performance on there. He definitely was not taking it as seriously as he had the first time, and he was kind of more just like goofing off, and I would say trying to more have fun rather than like do super well at Survivor. But nonetheless, he was a pretty entertaining presence on the season, and he did decent, but definitely didn't replicate his season 1 success. That being said, people have expected him to be on subsequent seasons of Survivor because they have had other all-returning player seasons, or just seasons that featured returning players in general. So there are 3 seasons in particular that Richard was expected to play on, and he didn't end up playing on, and so I'll touch on those 3 seasons and then also why he didn't play on each of them. So the first 2 are pretty connected and basically for the same reason, and those are Survivor Season 20, Heroes vs. Villains. Richard was originally supposed to be on that season. And then Season 22, which was called Redemption Island. So what the season ended up being was 2 teams with, like, I guess 1 returning player for each team. And it was Russell and Boston Rob were the 2 returning players who were like the captains for each team. This idea has been done before in like Survivor Guatemala, and it's been done since in like Survivor South Pacific and a few other seasons like the Philippines. They did this idea, and then also Edge of Extinction, they did this idea as well. But this was it was supposed to be originally, the season 22 was supposed to be Russell versus Richard Hatch, because each had gotten sort of into this argument with the other that they were the better Survivor player. And so season 22 is supposed to be each of them on a returning basis as a captain of a tribe to kind of prove like who was the better player. But Richard was not on this season, nor was he on season 20, basically because of like legal reasons, slash he was having some personal troubles with like being incarcerated. So if you're not familiar with this, Richard Hatch, obviously got the $1 million from winning season 1, and he's in the business world. I don't know exactly what he did for a living or what he does for a living, if he still does it, but you probably could find out if you go to his YouTube channel. He has a YouTube channel now where he does videos on Survivor and other topics, but he basically wasn't paying his taxes for a couple of years, and so I'd say like a year or 2 before Survivor 20 happened, this really started to catch up with him, and I believe he actually did go to jail for maybe like 1 or 2 years. I'm not exactly sure of the timeline. He either went to jail like right before Heroes and Villains happened, he went for like a year, or it was like he was being investigated around that time, and then like right after he was going to prison for a year. But either way, he went to prison for tax evasion for a year. But so that's why he wasn't on season 20 or 22. So season 22 originally was supposed to be like him versus Russell, and then they just transformed that to Boston Rob versus Russell, because on Heroes and Villains, the 2 of them had a bit of a rivalry. But on Survivor season 20, we really missed him because obviously he was a very big villain on season 1 Survivor, and being Heroes and Villains, he really was, I would say, a key figure in the world of villains. But of course he wasn't on there, and instead if you're trying to figure out like who probably replaced him on the cast, it probably was Randy Bailey from Gabon. Probably was his replacement, but because they were kind of looking for they look for one person to fill each archetype on a season, and so they were kind of looking for like a mid-50s, early 50s player, or like later 40s, and so Randy was ultimately who they picked, but I think originally they would have had Richard fill his spot. And then if you want to fast forward a bit, the next season after those that he was supposed to be on was Survivor 40. And the reason that he wasn't on this season is quite a bit different than season 20 and 22. So season 40, of course, was an all-returning player season. It was it wasn't. It was Winners at War, so it was an all-winner season, bringing back winners from throughout the years to compete on Survivor. So now, one of the reasons that he wasn't on, and this is a much lesser reason, was that he got a bit older, and they kind of veered away from older winners here. Like, they didn't have Tina on, they didn't have Bob from Gabon on. Richard, I believe, is about 60 years old, and as far as winners go, that actually I think would have made him the oldest one on the season, because Tom Westman also wasn't invited, and he's like late 50s, and he wasn't invited, so that's part of the reason, and they want to do a lot more like athletic challenges, they said, so that's a reason that they didn't have him on. That's basically Survivor's reasoning, is that we didn't want him on because we wanted younger, more athletic winners so that we could do a lot more fun and kind of physically intensive challenges. But if you listen to Richard's side, it's that they wanted him on, they asked him to be on, they called him up, they said, hey, please be on this season, and then mysteriously at the last second they called him back, and without any rationale or explanation, they said, you're off the season. So that's Richard Hatch's side of the story. I've listened and watched his YouTube video on it. You can go to his channel and check it out if you want his explanation. I think that video came out probably 2 weeks before Winners at War started, so probably like late January of this year. But really what most people thought was the reason that they didn't have him on Winners at War is that in Survivor Season 8, he did a lot of the nude walking around on the beaches, or he competed in challenges nude a lot of the time as well. He did the same in Season 1, not really in challenges, I don't remember, but he would just go fishing naked or walk around the beach naked after, like, in leisure and downtime. But in Survivor Season 8, he was naked, I'd say, a lot more of the time, and he would just naturally, like, walk around and just be nude in different activities he was doing. And obviously, if you've seen Survivor Season 8, there's this one kind of not appropriate scene where they're at a challenge, and you kind of have to, you're in close quarters when you're passing people on like a balance beam on this challenge, and him and Sue, who was on Season 1 with him, are passing one another, and throughout that whole season, they had been doing a lot of kind of like talking back and forth, and kind of like jabbing back and forth at one another. But then there's a moment where he kind of like, he's trying to do it jokingly, but he kind of like rubs up against her, and of course he's performing this challenge naked, and she was uncomfortable with that. And then if you haven't seen the season, I won't spoil it for you, but it had implications of like how each of them finished the game, I would say, and like how the next couple of votes played out, because she was really uncomfortable with that experience, I guess you'd say. And it wasn't like they prosecuted him for like sexual assault or anything afterwards. It wasn't that serious, but I think just with how Survivor had this incident on Season 39, they were really, really conscious of like anything that could be inappropriate or not proper conduct, and so they just wanted to avoid any chance of stuff like that happening, so they didn't want Richard on the season for fear of him being nude all the time and like making people uncomfortable. So I think that's really why they didn't have him on. I don't know if Richard Hatch is a bad person or not. You know, I can't judge him, or I don't know him very well just from watching a couple of episodes that are 40 minutes long of what he does, but it would have been cool to see him on any of those seasons returning, but I can't fault Survivor for making the choices they do in the casting process and steering away from somebody who either is having incarceration issues involving tax evasion, or issues involving personal space and respecting others as far as, you know, being nude and making other people feel uncomfortable. So I don't know who's right and who's wrong, because I obviously don't know these people personally or super well, but that's really the background of why Richard Hatch has not returned on Survivor since 2004, when a lot of people have expected him to along the way. So there you go, guys. That's the video for today. Hope you found it interesting and informative. And with that being said, I will see you guys next time. Bye.